All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO Podcast with David Malicoat.
All right, gang, welcome to the Professional CISO Show. I'm David Malicoat, I'm your host, and we got a commentary one for you this week. And I kind of want to go off of what I have seen out and about, and also what I have been hearing, also what I have folks telling me, which is, I kind of see this little bit of a thing kind of bubbling up, and I want to kind of get it out there. I want to kind of talk to folks. I want to kind of cover some things. So ultimately, we're going to talk about AI, which of course everyone is thrilled about, but and we'll get into that. But I think we have something here that is very important, and I think the rapid advancement of AI. It's reshaping the cybersecurity landscape. I think it's in real time, quite honestly, and it's presenting us as CISOs with both unprecedented opportunities, but we also have some complex challenges, right? So it's clear organizations are just moving fast to increasingly integrate AI into their operations. And I think we have an opportunity here to be uniquely positioned to harness this technology to enhance our security. Yes, right, there's a good thing there, manage risk, but also we can also elevate our strategic influence within the executive suite and maybe the boardroom. And so my plan on this episode is to kind of go into that a little bit, that last part. Will be some other ones. I think we could definitely cover something around how you might be able to harness AI in your day-to-day and running your security program. I also think there's an opportunity there as far as how you can interact with folks around AI in your organization. But I think this one here is, how do we become, as cybersecurity leaders, how do we become the place to go, or at least a strong leader and proponent of this new technology? And so I want to start with, there's all these opportunities. Funny enough, the cow's out of the barn, and honestly, it's running for the hills. I don't think this is a case of like we're going to get in front of it at this point. I can tell you that over the last year or so, I've personally seen this, and I've heard it many more times, witnessing, kind of this eye roll that comes around when AI and it's the hype cycle and all these things around, in our conferences, our dinners, and our gatherings. And they equate it to kind of the hype cycle around what cloud computing was, maybe back in the early 2000s into the 2010s, where it's just another thing. It's repeating itself. It's this, I heard somebody say the other day, it's not necessarily exactly the same words, but it rhymes, right? And I get that. I truly do. But I think there's some components there that make it truly transformational that we need to be aware of. And so saying that it's the equivalent of cloud computing, I think that tends to diminish it a little bit. And I would say, this is, using the same analogy of the cow getting out of the barn, it's the equivalent of standing in the barnyard telling the pig how frustrated you are that the cow ran away. What are you doing about it, right? Are you actually going to go and try to make sure that you have, beef to eat later on for your family and for the community? So I think we have a unique opportunity to harness this generational technology, and not only in our own practices, because again, like I said before, I think that's a very strong piece of this, but it also means that we have the ability to broaden our influence in the C-suite and the boardroom. But there's some things that we have to do, but we only if we stop rolling our eyes and guide the hype cycle into our favor, right? So what I want to do is I want to get into kind of this leveraging AI to enhance our role, okay? Afternoon coffee, away we go. All right, so AI offers CISOs a platform to elevate their role not just from technical overseers, let's say, but to strategic leaders in the executive suite. Well, that's a whole lot of what our conversation has been about on this show from the very beginning, is how do we go from that technologist to the strategic leader? This is a unique opportunity. I think if we stand up and we pay attention and really, okay, for lack of a better way to put it, because I hate the buzz words and things like that, but if we lean in and take control of this, we have the ability to not only serve our companies but serve ourselves. So, if you listen back to our episode with Deborah Von Stork, she is a non-technical business leader. She's been involved with boards her entire career, 38 years. And so she's non-technical, and she says, hey, we are looking for CISOs to step up when it comes to AI. There's this need. They know that CISOs have this unique blend of technical acumen and risk management focus. Like these business leaders know that. So, and again, this is not an indictment on all of us. Don't get me wrong. There's people out there doing it right. So please don't, take this out of context or, quote me, verbatim relative to just this one snippet. What I'm saying is, on the whole, if we have the bell curve of how CISOs are, we tend to remain technical. And we've talked about all that. So, but these folks know that we have this risk management. And so why are we necessarily not leaning in on AI at this point in time? Because ultimately, business leaders, they want a calm, informed voice in the room that will provide business-enabled guidance, right, on how best to safely maximize AI investment and execution, right? These folks, having just even in my day job conversations, these people want to do it right. They have the right intent. They even have an idea of how powerful this can be. But what they don't have is that person sitting there, or the set of people sitting there going, hey, here's some things to think about. Here's, and again, we'll get into all that here momentarily. But the need is there. So I guess for me, it's that distance between people rolling their eyes on the hype cycle and saying, oh, it's just another thing potentially, to now you have people outside of technical saying, we need that guide. We need that good steward that's going to help us maximize this investment and the execution on it. So how do we do it? All right. So again, in a lot of conversations, a lot of talking, this is not what I would call a comprehensive list. These are just some of the kind of the top ideas, right? I can tell you again from experience, taking leadership of the AI governance efforts is a really good way to go, right? And so taking that ownership of the AI governance frameworks, it showcases not only your leadership, but then obviously it's advantageous to you as a leader. Or if you're not that CISO or maybe deputy CISO, maybe you're a security mid-level leader or things like that, or even a practitioner being involved, you're getting involved at the ground level, right? And you have more say early, right? So by setting those standards for ethical AI use and risk management, right? So now you have the ability to kind of start plowing that risk management into the governance framework where maybe it might be missing if you were not in those meetings. You can position yourselves as the forward-thinking strategist integral to the organization's success, right? So now all those times that we talk about, hey, I want that seat at the table. I want to show business value. I want to show how a cybersecurity program can actually support the business and not just be a cost. Here's your chance. Go get involved in that process around the governance. So number one, get in on the ground level, right? So get in as early as you can. If that ship has already left the dock, well, you got to get in there as quickly as you can. It's okay to be added on later. And if you can, lead the charge. It may not be a case of where you're anointed, right? It may not be a case of where you're voluntold that you're going to be maybe the chair, but you're going to go into a place where you're going to say, okay, at least I can come in and influence and lead in some way. Now, another good piece of this, it gives you that time and opportunity to educate your stakeholders as the journey unfolds. Again, how many times we as security leaders have come in and have to go bolt on security after all these decisions have been made? Prime time to get in and make sure that as these things are going on, you have the opportunity to educate all these other either non-technical or just purely technical people in that governance group. Now, another one is, okay, I may hear from CISOs or other leaders, I've already got a lot on my plate, right? I mean, I've maxed. Like, how can I? Well, it's time. You got to put in the work. It will pay off in the long run. This is something that you want to get in front of. So in this case, what we're saying is, hey, maybe there's some delegation that you can do in other areas, right? Maybe there's some things you can do that you can prioritize in a different way, right? Whether it be through third parties, whether it be through now you're empowering your subordinates to pick up certain other areas. And maybe it's a case of it's not necessarily going to be a heavy lift. There's going to be work in the beginning, obviously, but of course, like I always tell folks, work smarter, not harder, right? So you got to put in the work. But again, I think that work that you put in early will now even out as the time goes on, because that influence piece has taken effect, taken root, and you're going to have that ability to influence and not necessarily have to work as hard up front that you did up front. So I think the governance piece is going to be very important. I can tell you from personal experience, I was tapped by my CEO to be the chair of our AI steering committee. And I understand it. It makes sense. And that was not solicited. Now, it took me some cycles to go, yeah, this is probably a good idea. This is a good way to go, because it serves my purpose as the protector, so to speak, of my organization, or as the person tasked with making sure that we do things in a secure and safe manner, that I have the ability to have that influence early. Good news is, as a chair, you're not necessarily doing, sitting on your throne and saying thou shalt. It's not like that. It's more of a, can I guide? I'm facilitating everything. I'm the hub, right? Everything's going to run through me. So there's no other conversations that are really going to happen outside of what you have purview over. That's a good thing, okay? Do you truly know your data in today's AI-driven world? Can you protect it? Symmetry Systems helps safeguard data at scale, detect and reduce identity threats, ensure compliance, and reduce AI risks. Symmetry's innovative platform merges identity access with DSPM, delivering security outcomes that matter, such as finding $1.8 million in savings by eliminating petabytes of data, removing thousands of dormant identities and excessive permissions, and satisfying HIPAA and PCI compliance in record time. Organizations of all sizes trust Symmetry to protect their data without it ever leaving their custody and control. Innovate with confidence with Symmetry Systems, the data plus AI security company. Visit symmetry-systems.com to request a demo, or come see us in person at the Dallas CISO XC Spring event on April 17th. And join us afterwards at D. Lincoln Prime Steakhouse. All right, so moving on, we're going to roll into the other piece of this, which is that idea of demonstrating business value. I think when we talk about that, there's a lot of folks that struggle with this, of how they take their programs and move it into the business value arena. AI is that perfect opportunity to do that, right? And you can quantify AI's impact. Now, this gets you outside a little bit of just pure security, right? But there's some of that can be. Like I'm looking forward to, in my current role, the ability to influence what choices are made relative to what we're doing in the security program. Because I don't want to do it under the covers. I want everybody to see, are we going to have faster threat detection? Are we going to have reduced downtime? Are we going to automate things? And that can be automation in the security team. It can be automation outside the security team with the business. And I think making sure, and this is something that my CEO did immediately out of the gate. He was like, I want to take our charter, our framework that we're going to do for AI governance, and I want to immediately compare it to what our company goals are. I'm like, golden. Like, that's exactly where we need to be. So aligning those that cybersecurity with those business goals and having AI as that conduit, or as that method, strong. It's a strong piece. And again, if you're in the governance and you're in the root of the governance, man, you're center stage and you're right in the middle of everything. So a big piece of this is presenting these outcomes in financial or operational terms that strengthen the case for your resources and influence, right? So as a CISO, you can say, I want to make sure that we are speaking their language, right? We've covered this many, many times, where or translators, right? So if we go in bleeps and bloops and this is how AI models work and LLMs and small language models and this, that, and the other, you're going to lose people, right? In the end, to be clear, the business wants that competitive edge and they want the cost savings that are associated with what AI brings. So if you don't frame it in those terms, you're going to find yourself asking, it's kind of be like, I don't know if everybody remembers kind of the joke around like, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca, right? When you really need to go to the bathroom, you're going to find yourself standing in a library and instead of, having a place to go to the bathroom. So in this case, what you're saying is you got to speak these folks' language and making sure that you have that ability to go in and, quantify it. Now, obviously, we have a hard enough time doing that as it is. Don't get me wrong. But how are we going to do it? Well, you're the pioneer, right? Being that the tech is emerging, there isn't a widespread consensus on how to do this. So you're going to have to kind of figure some of this out. It's going to be try, fail fast, pivot, right? Try, fail fast, pivot. Build this into your governance. That's the other piece. If you're involved in the governance, make sure that everybody that's having this conversation say, this is not going to be a one and done thing, folks. Like we have to have the ability to say, we're going to try some stuff, and some of the stuff is not necessarily going to work. But also make sure not only in your build it into your governance, but build it into your risk management plan, right? To say, what if this thing goes sideways? What if we're getting results that don't make sense, et cetera? Not to get too deep into it, but this idea of what if this thing goes off the rails? How are we going to manage the risk around it, right? Again, small bites, fail fast, pivot. And then, of course, right, I always like, for those old folks like me and some of the others in my age group, Stephen Covey, right? Start with the end in mind. What do you need to build into your model to ensure that you receive the measurements that align with your business goals? Work backwards, right? It's similar to what a few of our guests have said on past when they talk about building their security program. I don't start with my controls that I need to put into place. I start with what business outcomes I need, right? And then come back to what is the risk based on those business outcomes that people are looking for. And then I have the risk. Now, how am I going to mitigate that risk? Now those drive the controls that I need to put in place. Same thing here with AI. It's actually, pretty much exactly the same, except for now with the hype cycle and all that stuff, you're going to get more engagement, right? A lot of people are like, oh, maybe it's the business that's rolling their eyes on all those other regular things. Now with AI, they're like, man, you have people's attention. Go grab it and guide them through this. This is only going to make your stock go up as a business leader. Another piece, again, coffee break. Another piece of this is communicating effectively, easy for me to say, right? Communicating effectively with non-technical leaders, right? So, and this does go back to tying with the benefits, but let's talk about communications specifically. So translating AI's technical benefits into business language, right? So again, put it in terms they understand, but how do we do that on our side? This is a new technology, right? Don't we have to get some training or self-study or something like that to be able to understand what's going on? So we should be able to articulate how AI enhances our security posture, supports digital transformation, and then allowing us to build trust with the board and the C-suite, right? So it's how we communicate. So before it was more like we have to communicate like they do. Now, how do we do that? What specifically do we do, and what style do we use to do that, right? Now, one of the things I want to do is go back with one of our more recent episodes, which is with Russell Okoth. And one of the things he said in there, which is, I loved, was study communications, right? Maybe instead of taking that technical course, you're going to take a communications course, or go find somebody that you admire that communicates well, and figure out what they've done to help their communications, right? Another is, don't start with just with cybersecurity. Don't start with your native language, or even at a risk, start with their business outcomes, which we covered earlier. Then you can layer on the risk and the cybersecurity. You're going to have to do some of that. Don't get me wrong. It's not like you're just going to protect them from ever having to talk about risk or the cybersecurity or technical aspects of these things, because those conversations will come. But I think if you set that foundation, and again, back to point number one, which is having the ability to go in and say, I'm going to educate you from the start, and giving that open forum, allowing people to ask questions and build their base of knowledge, not just based off of you, but also together. That's a good thing. And then making sure that your communications mechanisms are radically non-technical. Again, making sure that you wipe it out as much as you can. You're going to cross over, but also make sure that as you do that you're doing regular follow-ups, making sure that your messaging is landing effectively, and then adjust. I think the key there being, hey, yes, you can make sure you're doing all these things. You got the checklist, bam, 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 you're going down. And then you turn around and you go, wait a minute, why don't anybody understand? Check in with your people, check in with your non-technical folks, check in, make sure that, hey, have them play it back to you, right? That kind of thing. Not in a way that's like pedantic, right? Or just, degrading, but just say, hey, I want to make sure, help me help you. I want to make sure that I'm messaging well. Can you kind of tell me what you understand X, Y, and Z to be? And then have them play it back to you. That's going to give you a really good gauge on where you're at with this, okay? So just making sure that your messaging is landing, but also make sure that you're ready and willing to adjust to be able to continue to make sure that it lands. All right. I think finally, I think this is the last one, engage in thought leadership, right? So you got to contribute to industry discussions, whether it be through forums, publications, speaking engagements. It enhances not only your reputation, but it enhances your ability. I mean, I think there's a quote, it's like, the best way to understand a subject is to teach it, right? Because you have to become a student to then become the teacher. And so, and then obviously the value, which I can tell you just 100% just by me doing the show for the last over a year, is I have learned so much just by speaking to other smart people, right? And having that ability just to have that interaction. And it's the online conversations, it's the ones in front of the camera, it's the offline conversations, it's the follow-ups on text or email. Having that ability to go out there and engage. Now, share your insights, share what you've learned, right? I think that's a big key, right? To be able to say, hey, there's nobody that's an expert right now, right? I mean, how do we tackle AI security? There's a lot of notions out there, right, of what one should do. We can apply, our current best practices, but it hadn't been around long enough to where we can sit there and say, oh yes, we have, here's the way to do it. Because obviously we can't even do that for regular security right now. Not that we should, don't get me wrong. There's gonna be a lot of different ways to get the outcomes that an individual organization is looking for. One of the things I'm gonna say, and I've started saying this more and more, and I think this is something I've put forth, yes, because of what I'm doing here with the show. You have an obligation to share your story, to share your knowledge, to share your experience. I have folks that tend to be a little shy, right? Or say, they would maybe agree to come on, or, or not, right? And I think those days are over. And it's a maybe it's a vanity piece of this where they're like, oh, I'm not that type of person. I wrestled with this when I started the show, where I was like, I'm not vain. Like I'm not the guy that wants to be in front of the camera. Well, look at here I am, right? But the other piece of this is what's the mission? What's the goal? What are we after in doing this? And the answer is, can we cycle faster and get these ideas out there faster and broader into more of an audience, so where we move faster as an industry in solving some of these problems? And I think the answer is yes. So that's not a vanity component by any stretch of the imagination. That's why when I talk to like vendors for sponsorship, or when I talk to folks around coming on the show, that's why I get so passionate, or talk about subjects about what we're going to talk about on the show. That's why I get so passionate, because I'm just like, everybody has a story, and you have an obligation to share it. Because if you're sitting in a seat that has the CISO title or equivalent, you have been tapped to say you have enough experience to share that story. You have enough. I mean, it's not a case of that you don't. So, and I understand there's some people that are shy or easily embarrassed, but I will counter that, right, with this idea of, how do you expect to speak to the board of directors or the other folks in the C-suite if you can't get in front of an audience or a camera, right? So I'm going to kind of call that one out a little bit. Again, you don't have to be an extrovert. Nobody's asking that. I mean, I would say maybe close yourself in a quiet room for a few hours before you do the thing that you're going to do, and then save it up and be your most polished self for that hour or so that you're going to have to be either on stage or in front of the camera. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, that sounds pretty self-serving, Dave. And you're right. I am selfish. You're damn right I am. And again, it only comes through the learnings that I've had in bringing people on. I really don't want the folks that are camera seeking or attention seeking because they tend to do it for different reasons. What I want is people that have a story to tell and that they're interesting, and by the way, everybody's interesting, and that's part of my job, making sure that I ask the right questions to make sure that everybody understands that's listening to the show that you're interesting. But yes, it is a little bit selfish. But again, back to the whole goal of the show, which is making sure that we increase the pace in which our industry evolves to the demands that are being placed on it. And as the leaders in this industry, as the true, again, tapped on the shoulder leaders, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that happens. My goal with this show is to make sure that we have a place to do that effectively and unbiased, and having it done in a very real and truthful way. So, don't in the end, do your part, right? Again, selfish, yeah, 100%. But at the same time, it's not for anything other than let's get these out there faster. And the other part of it is, it's not something to say that you have to come on this show. If you haven't participated in an audience-based talk or been on a podcast in the last 6 months as a security leader, I would say you're behind, right? And you should be talking about AI. You should be talking about how you're doing vulnerability management. And again, not specifics, but how do you approach it? What are some of the different things? What do you do on staff development? What are you doing on, go back and look at all the 57 episodes that we've done so far, and more. How do you get on a board, right? How do you make sure that you're effectively talking to your board of directors, on and on and on. So if you haven't in the last 6 months done that, I'm calling you out right now saying you need to go seek that out. And if this resonates with you and you want to participate in this show, come just send me a note. All right. Now, of course, doesn't have to be on the show. Seek reputable opportunities with genuine interactions. That's the key, right? I think that's the whole thing. It doesn't have to be any which way. Seek reputable opportunities with genuine interactions, because I can tell you that is one of the tenets of this show, is making sure that we have that A, we maintain our reputation, and that B, that our interactions are genuine and they continue to be. So if that's something you're looking for, we might land there. Now, you have opportunities, great, right? There could be challenges like executive resistance, and there's a fast pace to AI. As soon as you put something down on camera or put it out in front of an audience, it's, the next day it's dead. I don't know. I've seen that happen. And there could be, some complexities that arise. You can't let that deter you, right? I think if you're going to have an ongoing dialogue, I think everybody needs to understand that it's a dialogue, and maybe that's what you put in your conversation, like this. This is a dialogue, right? This may be outdated 2 months from now. I don't know. But in the end, if we don't have this conversation now, and I don't influence a few people to step forward and say, I need to get more involved in the AI development and adoption in my organization, then I wouldn't have done my job or my intent or my mission here with the show. So what I can say is, as you go through, build those business cases inside your organization, right? Adopt phased implementation and prioritize ongoing education, right? I think that's really going to be kind of the core three things. Build those compelling business cases, document them, make sure you're involved. Again, if you're involved in the governance from the very beginning, you're going to have exposure to those right away, right? And it's not like a case of you're big time in anybody. Make sure you're involved. Put yourself in the position to be vulnerable, right? Adopt phased implementation. Again, this is not going to be a big bang, right? It's not like, nobody dumped everything into the cloud back in the early 2000s, right? And then prioritize ongoing education. How do we, as a group, how do I get myself smarter? How do I get my security team smarter? How do I get my governance group and my broader engagement or stakeholders in my business educated about not just what AI is, how it can be implemented, what are the advantages, what are the risks, and then how do we protect it, right? So I think that ongoing education piece is going to be huge. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up with AI does represent a dual-edged sword for CISOs, right? It offers powerful, powerful tools, right? We can bolster our cybersecurity, but it also introduces new risks to manage. But if we build our expertise, we collaborate across functions while adopting these tools, and we craft those tailored policies, staying regulatory compliant, we can approach this development with confidence, right? Not just confidence, but I think it's a place where we can actually really change how the CISO role is regarded and brought into the broader conversation, right? We can showcase AI's business value. We can communicate it strategically, right? Leading that governance and engaging as the thought leaders that they expect us to be. Keep in mind, remember Deborah von Stork. We can elevate that stature in the executive suite, right? So embracing AI responsibly, it's not just a necessity, it's an opportunity for us to redefine our role as indispensable architects of a secure and innovative future. Let's not miss this opportunity. Let's get out there, whatever we're doing, if we're eye rolling, that's problematic. And so I think being able to say, you know what, it's not just about the hype cycle, because yes, people are going to market the ever living out of this. Let's get ourselves in a place where we are the place where people go for this information and this guidance. We can help our organizations, and we can make sure that we, as the good stewards that we are, step up to this moment and give ourselves that opportunity that we've been seeking. Use this AI innovation and this AI evolution as that tool. So, with all that, friends, we're done for this one. I truly appreciate you listening, and I know it's sometimes hard to sit and listen to me just yap for about 30 minutes, but in the meantime, I wish you health, happiness, and success in your journey in becoming the professional CISO. Let's do this.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO Podcast.